On repairing door lock actuators on a Honda Fit. This is for if the automatic door locks stop working and you don't want to spend the hundreds and hundreds of dollars they're going to charge you either for them to repair it or for you to buy a whole new actuator device and repair it. I was able to fix mine for less than $5 and a little bit of elbow grease. If you follow the steps perfectly, it shouldn't take more than an hour. Now I did make a few mistakes along the way, but I'm going to discuss them later in the video. As long as you follow this, it should be pretty easy. I have to start off with an apology. I did not make a video of tearing down the car because I didn't know what I was doing, but I did make a video of putting it all back together again. So if you want to skip to the end of the video and then see how it's all put back together so you can do it in reverse, that's fine. Otherwise, I'll walk you through it in the pictures here, and it's really not that bad once you understand the steps. You're going to start by prying off this piece of plastic. I used a paint scraper, but really you can use any flat surface or even a screwdriver as long as you're careful. Once you pry it off, there's a screw underneath there, and there's a screw that's visible on the handle. Once you take both of those off, you can grab the entire door panel and try and wedge either a piece of plastic or a flathead screwdriver behind it, and essentially you just pry the whole door off. It'll come off if you just pull gently. Up at the top by the window, it is hanging there, so you lift it up once you've gotten all the pieces pried off. Don't forget to unplug the power plug that goes to the window switch, and then you can pull the whole door panel off. And this is what it looks like once you have the entire door panel pried off. Now, this picture is the back side of the door panel. You'll notice there's a bunch of screws here. If you take those off, then you can remove the actual armrest that has the switch for the window on it. And you'll want to do that because then you can plug the switch back in for the window and you can roll the window up and down so that you can work on things and get the window out of the way. So this picture is actually a different step that comes in later, but I just wanted to show you how right here we have the switch for the window plugged back in. So back to our door here. Here you can see there are these little plastic buttons that you can pry off, and it gives you access to two bolts that are holding on the door handle. You'll want to remove those. I believe it's with a 10mm socket, but you'll have to test it out to see which fit. Once you have those bolts off, you can pry the door handle off with just a light screwdriver from the bottom, and it'll pop up. You'll notice here that there is a little bar that's running down to the actuator, and that's the actual mechanism that opens the door. What you want to do is pop off the little piece of plastic, and then you can pull the bar out. Again, look at the video at the end of this if you want to see an actual video of how that piece goes together. Okay, back to this picture. There's a handful of screws you'll need to remove, but in this picture there's one specifically that you'll actually be able to see, and it is right here. Then you'll go to the side of the car. Here you'll remove these 3 Phillips screws. These screws are in there very tight, so make sure you don't strip them. A number 3 Phillips head screwdriver is what's best for this. I found out the hard way that even though the actuator is completely detached now, that you cannot get it out without removing the window and the rear channel for the window. The rear channel for the window runs about right here. But don't worry, this is actually an easier process than you think. First, you're going to start by removing this screw that's holding on the rear channel. Then you'll want to pry off this piece of plastic. You'll see a small single screw in there. Once you remove that, you can go to the other side of the door and pry off the piece of plastic that screw was screwing into by lifting that piece of plastic straight up. I apologize for not having video of this, but if you go to the end of this video, you'll see me putting it all back together in video form and you'll understand it better. Once that's done, then you can pull off the channel that's holding the window in place. You can roll the window up, pull the bolts off the window, and then eventually pull the window out. Again, I just strongly recommend that you go to the end of this video, watch how it's all put back together so that you actually understand what's going on. It's really not that bad. The complicated part is coming next. Once you finally get the actuator out, then you can follow the next steps for repairing the motor inside it. Okay, so for the initial teardown, we'll start on this side. There's 2 screws that you need to take off. That one and that one is all. And then this plastic pries off. Some of this insulating foam here is a little bit difficult to keep in one piece, but you do your best. Okay, so from there you're going to pry this cover off. You're going to take off this screw, which is the child lock here. You see that? Make sure you keep in mind how this is put on. This piece I usually leave attached, but you can bend it out to the side and pop it out if you want. Basically, this screw just comes off, the child lock lifts straight up, and then this screw comes off here too. Those are the only screws you're going to take off on this side. On the back side, you're going to release all of the screws here. All of these and that guy right there. Okay. I didn't show how I took these off initially. This is the inside door handle. It simply just pops out of the plastic. This piece down here pops off. You push it down and then it slides out. It's really simple. For the brake, to get it in and out, you just pop it off the plastic right here, just snaps off, and then you feed it through that hole or out of the hole, depending on if you're taking it on or off. Now, if you're just taking out the latch mechanism, you can undo this screw right here and leave the rest of these in. This is to access the gearbox and the motor. The other thing you have to do is you have this guy on right here. You just have to force it off gently without breaking the plastic. I pry it off with a screwdriver is what I did. So once you do that, this comes off, just slides out. And what you want to be really careful with is that little piece of metal there. That'll cause you all sorts of trouble when you're putting it back together. So you got to make sure when you put it back together, I've mentioned this several times because it took me several days to get my door open because of this. This square hole right here, right there, needs to go over this little nub right there when you put it all back together. Otherwise, your latch won't work at all and there'll be absolutely no way to open it without drilling and cutting. And once all the screws are out, there's 4 latches. 1, 2, 3, 4 that you have to release, and then you should be able to pry this piece off right here. Alright, so once you release the 4 latches, I just use a flathead screwdriver just to pry them, then you can take this whole box off. There's a handful of gears in here that you want to be careful with and try not to change their alignment. This guy right here causes a lot of problems, and I'll show you why later. But in general, you have this box here. Since this is a rear door, there's nothing else connected here, but I imagine on the front driver's side door at least, depending on your model, there's probably some electronics here to indicate whether the door's locked or unlocked. I obviously don't have that here, and I haven't taken that apart, so I don't know what it looks like. But you've got your motor, you've got a spiral gear here, you've got a straight gear here, and then there's just a little spring in there. Kind of helps compress that. If that falls out, it gets too big, so you have to put it in, and I found twisting this wheel gets that to tighten down and go back down in. Now the trick here with this gearing system, see how it goes smoothly back and forth when I twist the wheel? If I change it by even 1 gear and try, I'm not getting anything there. So what happens is there's a gear, one of the gears here is shaved down. You can't see it, but you can feel it. There's one that's shorter than the other. And here, hidden in all the grease at the bottom, there's a little lip right there. So basically this gear won't slide over this gear unless the short gear lines up with that lip. So if you're trying to go back and forth and it's getting jammed like that, then you need to keep adjusting it until it slides perfectly. It's kind of something that's easier seen in real life though. So to take out the motor, you simply undo this single screw here and this whole black piece with the motor will come out. So this is usually the culprit right here if your door locks aren't working. This is the actuator that they want to charge $500 for. This motor right here is just a generic DC motor. You can order them online anywhere from $3 to $10, depending on where you look. And then that just pries off, straight off from there, at which point you can slide the gear off and get a motor that matches this. So this is the replacement motor I got. I got it off of Amazon in a 4-pack for like 20 bucks. The FC 280PC 22125. Now they make a lot of these different motors. It's the, I don't know what you call this, the stem that's different. This is a 10mm stem and it's D-shaped, so it's got the flat piece on one end. At this point I've got the new motor on. Got the gearing system how it was when I took it off. basically, if this thing is articulating, if this little gear is articulating smoothly here and it's not getting jammed up, then you should be good to just put it all back on the way you got it off. It just lines up. To mention, if you want your lock to actually work, this mechanism right here, this slides up and down, that's the lock right there. And then this is part of the lock too. This is actually the part that goes to your door. So you need to make sure underneath that that little knob goes right in that hole right there. So I push that all the way up, typically push that all the way up, and they do line up pretty well if you do it that way. But you test it when you put it back on by making sure that when you move this, that this piece over here will lock. I'll show. So I've got it snapped shut now. This is the locking mechanism right here. To make sure that it's connected properly, make sure that when I move this, it moves that right there. Okay? Again, be careful with this metal piece. You don't want to lose it. Okay, so now to test out the new lock, you see there's two big leads in here. The two big leads lead directly to the lock. So what I can do now, car usually uses a 12-volt signal, but I'll use a 9-volt here just to test the lock to make sure that's going to work right there. Now, it's a simple mechanism where the voltage in one direction locks it one way, and the voltage reverse goes the other way. As you can see, we have a functioning door lock now, and that's running off a 9-volt battery, but it's the same mechanism, works the same. So at this point, you can start putting it back together. I'm going to put these screws back in the back, except for that one right there, because I have to have the latch mechanism to put in. There's a few things to talk about before we do that. Okay, so it's time to slide the latch back in. Remember that little piece right here goes through that slot back there. And remember, the most important part here is that that hole has this pin go into it. This is crucial, crucial, crucial. Do not miss this. I did this. I put it on like this, so the pin was below that notch right there, so that when the door was actuating, it wasn't actually doing anything. It wasn't opening the latch. So my door was essentially trapped shut, and that's why I had to drill out this hole right here that I filled with moldable plastic I got off of Amazon. And I had to stick a hanger down through there to help trigger this mechanism right there. So the goal was I stuck the hanger down through and hit that mechanism right there, because that ultimately is what actually opens the door. It's not this latch right here. See, this latch moves that hole, which moves this latch, which further triggers this latch. So this is ultimately what releases the latch for the door. So if you have it all put together wrong, you're SOL, and you're gonna have to start drilling holes like I did. Yeah. Alright, so we've got the latch back on. What I like to do is test it here, and then I'm going to test it again in the same way before I put it on. So push this down to simulate the door closing, and then you can push this lever right here and make sure that it unlocks, and it does just fine. Just a side note, I'm not going to get into this detail, but there's two little plastic pieces that for some stupid reason have a spring between them. My spring disappeared, and the door wasn't unlatching, so that was yet another reason why it wasn't working. So I drilled holes in them, ran wires through, and basically twist-tied those pieces of plastic together, and it seems to be working for now. I'm not happy with it, because if that piece of wire breaks, my door won't open again, but at least we know how to fix it. For the door handle, it just goes in this hole here. This piece of plastic comes up and latches onto it. Sometimes you gotta use pliers, sometimes you can do it by hand. And then this plastic piece just pushes down into the plastic and locks in place that way. For the locking mechanism, all you do is feed that wire through the hole, and then once it's in, it's hard to do one-handed, but then you just push this down on the plastic there. And to take it off, you do the opposite. You pop it off and then just feed it out. Woo, it works. Okay, so here's the promised video of putting the door back together once all is said and done. This is actually the left rear passenger door because I had to replace the locks on both the left rear and the right rear passenger door. I apologize for the quality, as I had to record it from a GoPro attached to a chesty. I don't have much other equipment because I don't make a lot of videos and I didn't have anyone to help me out. But I wanted to at least make something for people that are stuck in the same situation I am, so they don't have to pay Honda hundreds and hundreds of dollars for their defective door lock actuators. So what you gotta do is you gotta pull this rear channel out of the way. Just kind of set it where it's out of the way. And then you can slide the lock mechanism in place. So before we get it on there too tight, I'm going to come here and pry off the door handle. There's nothing holding the door handle on because I've previously taken the 2 bolts out from behind. Now what we want to do is get this little piece, get it in position to run through this right here. So you push it through there and lock it on. Once you have that on, you just push the door handle back into place, and then you'll eventually secure it with screws on the other side. Okay. So to reattach the door handle, I prefer to use a setup like this because they have access holes for you where you can just run it straight to where the screw hole is. There's a little hole here you can peek through, and you can screw the door handle back on. Nice and tight. Be careful pulling this out because I've dropped the adapter in there more times than I can count. And then again, you do the same thing right here. And eventually, you'll actually plug these holes again as you're putting everything back together. Right. You can try and get the rear channel back into position, but don't screw it in yet because we need it loose to put the window back in. So we're going to take the window, we're going to slide it in carefully. Usually like to push it in so it's tight on this side here, and it's behind the channel here. So as I get it down, I can move the rear channel so that it is around the window. And then it's in, just like that. So now, if you turn the car back on, you can roll the window up to access those bolts. Roll it back up so you can see the bolt holes. Nice and gentle, just in case there's anything in between. Then you have access to the bolt holes. So what you're going to do is put the 2 bolts back in there, and then here on the side is the screw for the rear channel. You put those all on, make sure the window's shifted as far forward as you can, and then your window's good to go. Okay, so once you have the window on, take this outside panel and the window sill. You start here. If you're on the left side, you want the L facing you. If you're on the right side, you want the R facing you. Put it on the channel there. You just slide it in. You want to make sure it's on here really well. Otherwise, you're not going to get a good seal with the window. Water's going to get inside. There we go. So, do it while the window's rolled down, because it's easier to get a good seal there. Make sure this outside lining is flush there. And you see these are T pieces that just go in there and slide down. Nice and secure. And the crazy thing to me, the only thing holding all of this stuff in place is a single screw that goes right there. This bolt is for the rear channel. So I showed you the wrong hole. This is the hole here, not that one. And that just tightens that outside panel on. It's the only thing holding it in place. At this point, the window's back on. I've rolled it up. So feel comfortable disconnecting this since I won't need to move the window anymore. And then I can reattach it to the door panel. So when you're ready and you've got the door panel all put together, you can put the plastic back on. This glue stuff is the stickiest stuff you'll ever work with, so there's certainly no need to put new glue on, and you'll find out as you're working with it that it gets everywhere. So you can plug, I'm trying to think, where's that hole? You plug those two holes back, and you put this back up, and you plug that hole through the plastic to hold it in place. If you can see that. Then there's another one on the other side that you do the same thing with. So before you put the door back on, make sure you plug that in. At this point, if you have all your other doors closed, you can press the door close button here and test to make sure the lock's working. But the most important thing you need to do is before you close the door, make sure that the handle is working. That's the most important thing, because if you can't get the door open, you're stuck. Alright, so the door hooks up here so that it can sit nicely while you push along the edges. Just make sure you pull the handle through, make sure you pull the power cord through here. Once you get it on, there's only 2 screws. There's one screw down here and one screw up here to put on, and then you just have that last panel to push on. And don't forget to put this little piece back on the window. There you go. Alright, so the last screw goes right here in the door. Just take this piece and just pop it right back into place. Let's see, remember that end slides in first, and the rest just pops on. And it's done. Looks like new.